What's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Jason.
And we are back with a new episode of Liquid Carnage. We want to thank everyone that let us take a week off last week for the Labor Day holiday. We were having some technical difficulties with Anchor. That's the program we use to record the show for you guys, so we do apologize for that. But we are back. We are stronger, better. Would you say we're better, Jason? We're rested.
I feel like we're rested. However, I do feel out of sorts when trying to get my balance of a week. Not having the recording, it did throw me off a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll admit I'm having the same problem. Normally we record on Monday nights, but with the start of football season, I'm in a fantasy league that meets every Monday night for pickups and drops. So for the first 3 weeks, we have to adjust this schedule. I mean, it's a process, but man, my week feels right once I get this going. Once we get this episode going, you know.
I do have to make a shout out. I finally found out that my girlfriend listened to the very first podcast of Liquid Carnage.
Oh, wow.
She'd never heard it before. Unfortunately, though, she heard the podcast about true crime. And I don't know if you remember, but we talked about a fantasy draft that we were going to be doing together. And she heard me make some disparaging comments about her being a girl and not choosing a kicker. And it was a very beautiful day that's ruined because of these comments. So as a formal apology, I'd like to apologize to my girlfriend in case she does listen again, that she was very instrumental in the drafts. She knew who Saquon Barkley was and how to pronounce his name. And we won our first game together of this season during the fantasy league. So I want to make a shout out to her. I'm so sorry for disparaging you. I tried to tell her it was entertainment only, but she didn't buy it.
Well, I don't doubt she didn't buy it because I think you were very sincere in your comments, both then and now. So I will tell her not to feel bad about drafting a kicker in the first round. I've been in drafts and leagues where people have done that before. Our executive producer, Tom, has done that many times. So it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just a unique draft style. Let's go with that.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I got that out of the way. And now back to recordings. I'm glad we're back to normal, buddy.
Yeah, me too. It's nice having a week off, but it's always hard getting back into the grind. You get to turn off your alarms for a long time, for a week in this case, and trying to get back in that routine of going to work and getting on a routine again is just hard.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I realize this is the first time I've taken a week off consecutively since we took a cruise in 2011.
That was a long time ago.
It was 8 years. You know how many vacations you've taken like a week or two at a time since then?
Dude, I'm Mr. Week Vacation 3 or 4 times a year.
Exactly. And this is only the second time in 8 years I've done that.
Well, you're a loser. You got to become a winner like me.
That's it, man. I'm gonna do it again. I've already made myself book a trip at the end of the year. I'm going back to New Orleans for New Year's, so that's gonna be a whole week long process, whole week fun. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I have a special idea this week, Scott, as like a coming back and getting into the swing of things, and just having a great podcast. A couple weeks ago, those team building exercises. I think you had a team meeting or something at your work, and I thought, team building exercises. Do you remember those where you get asked you get put into a situation where you're on a desert and you have to try to survive with 15 items?
Yeah.
I thought it would be a kind of fun this week, a participatory episode of Liquid Carnage, that we would actually read through a survival exercise and see if you would have survived or if you would have died.
That's a great idea. But before we get into that, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage, if you're playing fantasy football, and tell us if you won your first game, who is the MVP of your team right now. If you want to dog Tom for his fantasy football team, it's not hard. Hit him up on Twitter and Instagram, all at Liquid_EP. Now back onto the show.
Wow, I'm sure. Well, and I think for our listeners, because the two brothers, the executive producer and the talent of the show, had to play each other in the first week of our fantasy league, I think it's only appropriate that get called out. That's why you're chipper with your discussions about hitting Tom on Instagram, Twitter.
Oh, that is true. I did stop the proverbial mud hole in his team. In Tom's defense, he drafted a great bench with Tom Brady and Sammy Watkins and Mark Andrews from Baltimore. Had he started those three players, he would have smoked me like a Philly blunt.
Yes,
but
he would have.
He didn't. So I did what I do best to him. I beat him at fantasy football.
So here's how we're going to do it tonight, Scott. I'm going to read the scenario, and then I'm going to give the 15 items that you get to choose and rank. So for those of you who've never done this before, the scenario will be read, and hopefully you'll be able to participate at home. After I read the scenario, you're going to get I'm going to read you 15 items that are part of your rescue that are given to you, and then you have to rank them in terms of importance. And based on those rankings, it'll decide whether you would survive or die in this situation. And you'll kind of get the gist of it as I read the situation to you. But I'm going to read it to Scott, since he's going to have a chance now to decide how to survive in the cold.
Now, in full disclosure, before you start this, you did send this to me before we took that week off. So while on vacation, I did have a discussion about this with the people I was carpooling with. So
and you can use the answers that you came up with. I'll use the answers that I took, and then at the end of the podcast, I will read what an expert survivalist determines as the ranking of the 15 items.
That sounds great. Let's
get it on. At the very end, I will give you how to judge whether you would have survived or whether you would have kicked the bucket.
All right, let's do this.
All right. So here's the situation. You have just crash landed in the woods of northern Minnesota and southern Manitoba. It is 11:32 a.m. in mid-January. The small plane in which you are traveling has been completely destroyed except for the frame. The pilot and co-pilot have been killed, but no one else is seriously injured. The crash came suddenly before the pilot had time to radio for help or inform anyone of your position. Since your pilot was trying to avoid a storm, you know the plane was considerably off course. The pilot announced shortly before the crash that you were 80 miles northwest of a small town that is the nearest known habitation. You are in a wilderness area made up of thick woods broken up by many lakes and rivers. The last weather report indicated that the temperature would reach minus 25 degrees in the daytime and minus 40 at night. You are dressed in winter clothing appropriate for city wear: suits, pantsuits, street shoes, and overcoats. While escaping from the plane, your group salvaged 15 items that are listed below. Your task is to rank these items according to their importance to your survival. You may assume that the amount of each item is the same as the number in your group and that the group has agreed to stick together. So that is the situation.
Okay.
And Scott, as we discuss this, you might ask questions that our listeners might ask as well. Okay. So rank the following items according to their importance to your survival, starting with 1 for the most important item and then 15 for the least important. Okay. So here's what you get. You get a compress kit with 28 feet of gauze. 28 feet of 2-inch gauze.
Okay.
Cigarette lighter without any fluid in it.
Okay.
A newspaper. 2 ski poles. Sectional air map made of plastic. Family-size chocolate bar, 1 per person. A quart of 85 proof whiskey.
Woo, it's a party.
I know. I mean, you already know where my number 1 is, but
yeah,
we'll get into that in a second. A can of shortening. Ball of steel wool. A loaded .45 caliber pistol. A compass. A knife. 30 feet of rope. Flashlight with batteries. And then extra shirt and pants for each survivor. So at this point, we're going to take a brief pause, or you can stop the podcast at this point to write down those things, and I can read them again, or I'll put them in the description so you have them to go off of.
Yeah, and I should give full disclosure, not that it makes a difference anymore because it's been 20 years. Both the EP and I are Eagle Scouts, and we both did do a lot of work in wilderness survival in our teen years. But now that we're in our late 30s and early 40s, I'm not sure how much of that has stuck in the old memory bank. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we're going to find out because I have a feeling that you are going to be really good at this and you're probably going to survive. Then I'll give you my rankings and we'll go from there.
All right.
So I'll list them. Well, actually, you know what? This is a great thing about technology. You can rewind and listen to the 15 items again at some point.
All right. So what my important items are: numero uno.
Oh wait, I'm going to write yours down so that I keep track of those. So,
Okay.
What is your number one item?
I am going to go with the cigarette lighter and the piece of flint or the steel wool.
Okay, so which one's more important, the cigarette lighter or the steel wool?
I'm going to go with the cigarette lighter because even though it's empty, you still have the flint in there for the spark.
Okay, and the spark is
it's what's going to create the flame into the steel wool. So then you're going to need the paper for the kindling to get it for the starter. So you have to wrap that steel wool and that paper together.
Okay, so your first item is a cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
What's your second item?
The steel wool.
Steel wool is the second item. Okay.
Followed by the newspaper.
Newspaper is number 3. Okay.
I would go with the gun next since it's loaded. You can use the gunpowder for an ignition on the fire.
Okay.
After that, you're going to want the extra clothes because it is cold.
Okay, I'll put that as 5.
Man, after that's where it starts getting kind of.
Okay, how about this? Of the 15 items, what is the one item that you say, no, I don't need?
You're going to hate me for this, and most people probably disagree, but I'm going to go with the probably the map at this point.
The map is the one thing that you don't need.
I don't think, because we don't know exactly where we're at. Even though it's plastic, it can't be burnt. So it's great if you have landmarks and there's landmarks on it, but I don't think there is an air maps. So especially since they're off course.
Okay. All right.
I do think you can take that gauze and use the ski poles and wrap the gauze with it and do make a torch using the whiskey.
Ooh. Okay.
And once you get the fire going.
Okay, so right now you have the extra shirt and pants as number 5. Do you want the compress, the ski poles, and the quart of whiskey like 6, 7, 8?
Yeah, I would go with that.
Okay, you want to go in that order?
Yeah.
So we're gonna do the compress kit is 6, and the ski poles is 7, and the quart of whiskey is 8.
Yeah.
I mean, I figure that the whiskey, I mean, that's like critical. That's like a critical thing.
Yeah. Well, you can't be drinking in those kind of scenarios because it does lower your body temperature and slow your reactions. Okay. So it's not ideal in that scenario.
Okay. So what you have left is you're already up to 8, and you have the family size chocolate bar, the can of shortening, a compass, a knife, 30 feet of rope, and a flashlight with batteries.
The flashlight should be next.
Okay, so that's 9.
With the knife and rope.
So 10, and the rope is 11. Okay. So you've got 12, 13, and 14. You got a family-sized chocolate bar, a can of shortening, and a compass.
Probably the chocolate bar, and then I would rank the compass and map down there at the bottom, since it's 80 miles from any direction. You're not going to be able to hike out.
All right. And then so you have the cigarette lighter, you have the ball of steel wool, you have the newspaper.
Yeah.
Then you have the loaded .45 pistol, the extra shirt and pants, the compress kit, the ski poles, the quart of whiskey. Then you have the flashlight, the knife, the rope, the family-sized chocolate bar, the can of shortening, the compass, and the map.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I would probably move the can of shortening to the bottom.
Okay, so it's 13, so you can replace the compass. So is the compass more important than the can of shortening?
I think the compass and the map are more important. I'd move the shortening down to 15.
Okay.
And
so
on a side note for that, when I said I did this exercise on the way to our vacation spot down in Temecula, the shortening triggered a whole 45-minute conversation because one of the people I was with said, well, if you cover yourself in shortening, it's another layer of fat and it keeps you warm.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll So I moved shorting to 15, sectional air map
Yeah.
to 14, and then the compass to 13.
I wasn't done with my story.
Oh,
so that spurred a discussion of how important is the shortening in this case, because they were dead set on that shortening. If you cover yourself in shortening, that's another layer of heat. Come to find out, that only works in water, so it acts as like a seal, if you will, to keep the water and the cold off your skin if you're in water. But in a scenario like this, we deemed that it wouldn't be nearly as important since you have extra clothes and a fuel source.
Okay, so I'll read you my list.
Okay,
so I said the first thing would be the extra shirt and pants because I want to get warm, and I'm going to need those clothes no matter what. So I thought that was my most important thing. Then the cigarette lighter. Similar to you, I thought, well, the cigarette lighter, even though you don't have liquid, you can do a spark thing.
Yeah.
So that means that my 3 is the newspaper. Now, all that is good. So that's warmth, right? Well, then my 4 was the chocolate bar because I thought I'm going to need food, right? I'm going to need something immediate to give me some energy to keep going. I have the loaded 45 as my 5th item. Then I have the knife, the 30 feet of rope, kind of the same thing you were thinking, like I'm going to need to tie something, cut rope.
Well, still, and even if you try to hike your way out of it, if the conditions are like that, you're going to want to attach the rope to everybody involved to make sure you have a chain.
All right. So that was knife rope. Then I had the flashlight with batteries because I figure if you need to go to the pit, potty at night, you need a flashlight, right? The ball of steel wool. I didn't realize the importance of the ball of steel wool, so I probably messed that one up. Then the compress kit. I did have the can of shortening as 11 because my thought would be is that you could, if you needed to, you could eat shortening. So I wouldn't use it to lather myself up for Twister, but I would. I had the compass as 12, the 2 ski poles as 13, the sectional air map is 14, and then quart of whiskey. That's when you've just you basically said, look, I'm giving up. I'm not going to make it. So that's when you start drinking. So it's the least. But my thought is that if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't want to have anything too high priority that says, hey, let's get walking and try to go to the city. So I felt like the ski poles, the sectional air map, and the compass all were pretty bad.
Yeah, I do think if you had to, you could take the gauze and wrap it around the ski poles and probably cover it with some shortening and then some whiskey to make a torch if you really wanted to. But I mean, that's a little extreme for something like this. So why don't you go ahead and reveal to our audience and ourselves what the actual importance?
Well, let me ask you one final question. So I've given you mine and you've given me yours. I'll let you change any 2 items on the ranking.
No, I think I might move my chocolate bar up a little bit more, just like you said for the food source, probably to the number 5 or whatnot.
Right now your candy bar was 12, and your current number 5 was your extra shirt and pants.
Maybe like 6 or 7. I don't know. It's still
ski pole.
I would move it ahead of the compress kit.
Okay, so compress kit will go to 7, and then ski poles will go to 8, and quart of whiskey will go to 9. Chocolate bar will go to 6, 9, and then let's see, quart of whiskey 9 goes. Flashlight goes to 10. Knife goes to 11, and the 30 feet of rope goes to 12.
Okay.
Will that work?
All right. That works for me.
Yeah. Okay. So I moved it up. So that's good. We got that. Let's see. I'm just adding up your scores here. Hold on just a second, my friend. Hold on. You might be dead
in the water.
You might be dead. Let's see. So we're maybe not though. Maybe not. That's and 2. Okay. So let's see. All right. So I'm ready. Okay. Are you ready for the final reveal?
I am ready.
Okay.
I am ready.
So I'll read the whole thing. So for those of you at home,
Okay.
hopefully what you've done now is that you have basically written down your scores. You've written down your scores and, determined exactly, what your rankings are. Now, how you came up with those rankings, it really doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter. The good thing is that you've come up with the rankings, and that's what it is. Now, after I read what the experts say the rankings are, how you determine how well you did is you take the score that you gave. So let's say, for example, you listed your first item, Scott, as a cigarette lighter as number 1. If the expert said that the cigarette lighter is number 6, then the difference is 5. And then you keep track of that. Now, Scott, don't worry, because I'm going to do yours for you.
No, perfect. I am just the
Yes,
talent.
I will do. I'm going to do the brains of the operation, and we'll get that fixed for you. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So I'm setting up your score real quick. So give me one more second. Now, the purpose of this exercise, as you're listening to this, is what it's supposed to do is it's a team building exercise. So what should happen is everyone does their score individually, and then a team would get together and start discussing the points and negotiating with each other and using everyone's knowledge to try to come up with their scores. And
so what we're about to find out is if we, as a Liquid Carnage team, will survive this horrific accident.
The thought logic is that the combination of both of our scores would give us a better chance of survival than just trying to survive on our own. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
So the correct ranking of the survivors' items was made on the basis of information provided by a gentleman. This gentleman was an instructor for 3 years in survival training in the reconnaissance school in the 101st Division of the U.S. Army, and later an instructor on wilderness survival for 4 years at the Twin City Institute for Talented Youth. He is now conducting wilderness survival programs for the Minneapolis teachers. Okay. So these are his rankings. We can get into arguments all we want about, whether or not they're right or wrong or whatever, but these are his rankings. So don't kill the messenger. Okay. Number 1 item, cigarette lighter without fluid. The gravest danger facing the group is exposure to the cold. The greatest need is for a source of warmth, and the second greatest need is for signaling devices. This makes building a fire the first order of business. Without matches, something is needed to produce sparks to start a fire. Even without fluid, the cigarette lighter can be used to produce sparks. The fire will not only provide warmth, it will also provide smoke for daytime signaling and fire light for nighttime signaling.
All right.
Yeah, so I was off by 1. I said that was number 2. You were right on the money with number 1. Okay. Number 2, ball of steel wool. To make a fire, a means of catching the sparks made by the cigarette lighter is needed. Steel wool is the best substance with which to catch a spark and support a flame, even if it's a little bit wet. So I think I screwed that one up. I had a 9 on that one, and you had a 2. So already you're perfect so far. It is still early. Number 3, extra shirt and pants for each survivor. Clothes are probably the most versatile items one can have in a situation like this. Besides adding warmth to the body, they can be used for shelter, signaling, bedding, bandages, string when unraveled, and tinder to make fires. Even maps can be drawn on them. The versatility of clothes and the needs for fires, signaling devices, and warmth make this the number 3 of importance.
Okay, what's number 4?
Family-sized Hershey bar. To gather wood for the fire and to set up signals, energy is needed. The Hershey bars would supply the energy to sustain the survivors for quite some time. Because they contain basically carbohydrates, they would supply energy without making digestive demands upon the body. So now, see, here's the thing. So you had that as 12 before our talk, and then you upgraded to 6. So you actually improved your chances of survival by doing that. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Can of shortening. This Crisco's back.
It's gonna be a fucking orgy.
Twister Crisco's back on, buddy. This item has many uses. The most important being that a mirror-like signaling device can be made from the lid. After shining the lid with the steel wool, the survivors can use it to produce an effective reflector of sunlight. A mirror is the most powerful tool they have for communicating their presence. In sunlight, a simple mirror can generate 5 to 7 million candle power. The reflected sunbeam can be seen beyond the horizon. Its effectiveness is somewhat limited by the trees, but one member of the group could climb a tree and use the mirror to signal search planes. If the survivors have no other means of signaling, they would still have better than 80% chance of being rescued within the first 24 hours. Other uses for the items are as follows. The shortening can be rubbed on the body to protect exposed areas, such as the face, lips, and hands from the cold. In desperation, it could be eaten in small amounts. When melted into oil, the shortening is helpful in starting fires. Melted shortening, when soaked into a piece of cloth, will produce an effective candle wick. The can is useful in melting snow to produce drinking water. Even in the wintertime, water is important as the body loses water in many ways, such as through perspiration, respiration, shock reactions, and so on.
All right, I get
So
it. I get
you
it.
jacked that one up, buddy. You jacked that one up.
Yeah, I did. I jacked that one.
Flashlight.
What's next?
Inasmuch as the group has little hope of survival, if it decides to walk out, its major hope is to catch the attention of search planes. During the day, the lid, mirror, smoke, and flags made from clothing represents the best devices. During the night, the flashlight is the best signaling device. It is the only effective night signaling device besides the fire.
Okay,
piece of rope.
next?
The rope is another versatile piece of equipment. It could be used to pull dead limbs off trees for firewood. Next, newspaper. The newspaper could be used for starting fire, much the same as rope. It has also served as an insulator when rolled up and placed under the clothes around a person's arms or legs. It provides dead air space from extra protection from the cold. The paper can also be used for recreation by reading it, memorizing it, folding it, or tearing it. It can be rolled into a cone and yelled through as a signaling device. Never would have thought about that.
No.
Number 9,
Okay.
45 caliber pistol. This pistol provides a sound signaling device. There have been numerous cases of survivors going undetected because by the time the rescue party arrived in the area, the survivors were too weak to make a loud enough noise. The butt of the pistol could be used as a hammer. The powder of the shells can assist with fires. But this is the funny part. The pistol's advantages are counterbalanced by its dangerous disadvantages. Anger, frustration, impatience, irritability, and lapses of rationality may increase as the group waits to be rescued. The availability of a lethal weapon is a real danger to the group under these conditions.
Well, duh.
Knife.
What's next?
A knife is a versatile tool, but is not too important in winter setting. It can be used for cutting the rope, making shavings of the piece of wood for tinder, and many other uses.
Yeah, I think we get that. What's that? What's that?
Slow down, buddy. Jeez.
Well, I'm looking at the clock.
Hey,
we're gonna start running long.
Some people may want to survive.
Well, I'm just saying, some people know what the fucking knife does.
Compress kit.
All right.
I don't even need to explain it then. Okay.
Well, they're bandages. They're bandages. But go ahead. We've started this.
Ski
Let's finish this. Well, if you're gonna hike out, you need ski poles.
They're also used for stability of walking, in the snow. Quart of 85 proof whiskey. The only useful function of the whiskey is to aid in the fire building or as a fuel. No drinking.
Okay.
Sectional air map made of plastic. This item is dangerous because it will encourage individuals to attempt to walk the nearest town. Compass is the same thing. So compass was the last one.
So I got those last two right.
Can of shortening.
It stands the shortening. Yeah. I originally had them right. Okay. So, do we survive? That's the question.
All right. So, I added up your scores, and the difference in your scores. Oh, no, I want to do one more thing, though. 10, 11, 15, 16, 24, 29, 39, 41, 46, 50, 55. 55. Okay. So, Before you did anything, before you made your changes, your original request, your score was a 55, which was basically anything less than 50 is all survive. Anything between 51 and 60 is frostbite. Anything between 61 and 70 is 3 live.
You're dead.
Anything over 71 is you all die. Before we talked, you got a 55, which means you got frostbite. But after you made the change with the family size chocolate bar, You lowered your score to 47, so you all survived.
No, cool.
So even when I messed up with the shortening of myself, I got a 38 when I originally did this.
Yeah, but you got a 38 originally with that?
Yeah, because I was perfect on where I did well was the compass, the sectional map, anything that was talking about moving away. I got zeros on those, so the difference was perfect. I screwed up with the biggest mistake I made was the ball of steel wool.
I got you. Well, the bottom
we
line
did survive. So at home, if you're listening to this, go ahead and calculate your own score. See how well you did. See if you would have survived or if you would be preparing for a new life.
All right. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to post the scenario on our social media on Thursday afternoon, this afternoon. It's probably there by the time you're listening to this. And you could comment with your scores if you survived or if you didn't survive. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, all at Liquid Carnage. If you think Tom's going to survive or die, hit him up on Twitter and Instagram at liquid_EP.
That was well done. It'll be interesting. I hope everyone survives, but I have a feeling some people will die.
Oh, I think a lot of people are going to die.
So
I think a lot of people are going to put whiskey first.
Very big on keeping the shortening. Whoever that was, it's good for them.
Well, they had the right idea, but it wasn't to protect themselves from wind protection. It was for literal warmth. So the context wasn't quite what it was a lucky shot, as it were.
So they had a flawed judgment, but for the right reasons.
Yeah, they backed into a right answer by accident.
Okay. Good times, man. Good times. Thanks for doing that with me, Scotty.
Good times. No problem. So, hey, Jason, it's time to wrap up the show. So why don't you take us home?
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for listening to this special episode of Liquid Carnage. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know quite what to say, just have yourself some Liquid Carnage.